discriminate is a different word, okay? It's a different word, even though it sounds a lot like it. But the nice thing is the discriminant helps us to, okay, you can kind of think of discriminate, but not in like a negative sense. Discriminate can also mean like, and when it's not put in like some sort of negative, putting people down or not giving them their rights, etc. Okay, I need you to come back from the negative connotation. Discriminate. You can sometimes discriminate between like, oh, I'm discriminating between which option I want to order at Chick-fil-A. Now, okay, that's a really silly way of using it. You probably would never use it that way. But discriminating also, like telling the difference between, doesn't always need to be a bad thing. So, discriminant, even though it's a different word, you can think discriminate. We're trying to figure out how many solutions. We're trying to use this piece of the quadratic formula, which is normally underneath what? What's it normally underneath in the big formula? No, it's underneath the big old
radical.
Square root, the radical, yeah. So this is the guy who's underneath the square root. And wait a minute, hold on. Square roots. There's a thing with square roots. If you're taking the square root of a 0, this middle one equals 0. Hey, Isaiah, we're filling in. If this one equals 0, we're filling in the worksheet. Oh, okay, maybe pay attention because you still have to fill it in. So then if we have it equal to 0, Armando, hi, we're filling in the worksheet. Do you have the equals? Andrew, Joseph, are we good? We're filling in the worksheet? Okay, get what you need. It's okay, get what you need. We're filling in the worksheet. Equals 0. The square root of 0. What is the square root of 0, guys? How many solutions is that? You're going to put it in your calculator? Yeah, but wait, what if I'm adding and subtracting 0? Does that make a difference if I add 0 or subtract 0?
No.
No, I'm still just going to get how many answers?
0. 1.
And how can I tell that on the graph? How many intercepts are there?
1.
Yeah. So what you guys fill in for how many solutions this guy has if we're just looking at intercepts?
2.
Got it. And so how many intercepts does?
0.
Got it. So then wait a minute. What would be happening underneath the square root to make no possible solutions? It doesn't touch. That's what the graph does.
Not equal.
But what's happening under the square root? Have you guys ever put a square root in your calculator and it says error?
Yeah.
What kind of number was that? A negative number. So if this is less than 0, or you can say if your discriminant is negative, I'm going to have no answers, no solutions. So we can say no solutions if that helps. If there's a 0 underneath the square root, I'm going to have one solution. And if there's a positive number, okay, we're used to that. You guys just had an example that you were doing like your group quiz on, right? When you're doing your group quiz, you guys got a positive number. Wasn't it 40 underneath your square root? Which ended up being 6.3 that you had to add and subtract. So when you have a positive number, 2 answers. A negative number, no answers. That's what the graph looks like. And a 0, just 1 answer. It's always bouncing at the axis when there's a 0. So then I asked you guys to try to find the discriminant. Hopefully you were able to say A is, what is A?
1.
1. B is?
2.
C is? 1. Right? You gotta look at our equation. So when you plugged in, did you guys get 2 squared minus 4, 1, 1? What kind of discriminant would this be? What would be going underneath the square root in the quadratic? Well, PEMDAS tells me, and you guys had to do this in your group. Hannah, hey kid. When you plug in and when you need to simplify with PEMDAS, this multiplication becomes what, everybody? Yeah, because 4 times 1 times 1, that's just 4. My exponent makes this into what? 4. What is 4 minus 4?
0.
Okay, so when they say determine the number of real solutions, as soon as we find our discriminant, we know how many solutions. How many? Just 1. So this will be 1 solution. I don't mind if you guys just go ahead and use SOL. We can use SOLN. That's another abbreviation for solution. But yeah, 1 solution. Why? Because the discriminant is 0. Now number 10 though, we need to plug into, once again, our formula that you should have written down underneath your core concept of discriminant up above. We're going to plug in again. Who is your B squared? Who's your B in number 10? Now, a couple groups had a few issues because they were trying to plug in a -4 and square it. Remember, when you square a negative number, what do you get? A positive. Good. A positive 16. B squared minus 4AC. And you guys, in your example, had to deal with what if you have a negative times a negative? -4 times 1 is -4 times -7. Positive 28. We don't even, oh my goodness, that was basically like the one you did in your quiz. Because this ends up being 40, but either way, it's a positive number. How many solutions am I going to have if I'm square rooting a positive?
2.
Got him. 2 solutions. Now you can guess this one's none, but maybe they would give you a double, so be careful. Wait, this is like the quiz also. Hold on. I can't take it just as it's written. What do I have to do, Max?
It was on that sheet, that's all.
Oh, is it? Did the spacing mess up on the back too?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys.
44.
Yeah, you have to look. It kind of popped it down. It kind of popped it down. Oh, because I can't add? That's a struggle. I was doing like your quiz one, wasn't I? 44. But is 44 still a positive? Good. Okay, so still 2 solutions. But yeah, thank you. Thank you. You don't want to write something wrong on it. Now, can you guys find 11? Do you see that it popped down?
Oh.
Or you can just write it in right now. You see it?
So, like, the 4 minus 4 made it one solution?
Yeah.
Because it's a negative?
Because it's a
plus.
0. It's a 0. 4 minus 4, the discriminant is a 0. So when the discriminant is, because we're interpreting the discriminant, who's the formula up above. When the discriminant is a positive, I have 2 solutions. When the discriminant is 0, I have 1 solution. And when the discriminant is negative, I have no solution. Because then Alexis is going to get put into that square. So this one, guys, careful. Who's my A in this one?
3.
3. My B, these are easy, yeah?
Yeah.
But who's my C?
You took the add 6.
So it'd be a positive 6. Are we good? Standard form? Okay. So now we can plug in B squared. A negative squared is a positive, yeah? Minus 4AC. Positive 6. Uh-oh, wait a minute. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 6 is 72. Hold on. Do we even need to find the number to see if, or to know if it's going to be positive or negative?
It's negative.
So then what's going on when I have a negative
0 solution.
discriminant? Yeah. 0 solutions or no solutions. Either one. We're good. 0 solutions or no solutions. So wait, look at the rest of this worksheet. What's the next directions in 12 and 13?
Find the number of
Aren't they still, yeah, they're still just asking for how many. They're not even making us solve. Nice. We like these ones. They're not even making us do the entire quadratic formula. We're just doing the discriminant just to tell us how many we're looking for. So then, I think for 12 and 13, okay guys, it looks a little different because we're not solving for zeros, but aren't solutions like intercepts? 2 and 2, 1 and 1, 0 and 0? We get to do the same thing. We get to do the same thing. So can you guys go ahead and plug in 12 and 13? Can you plug into your discriminant just like you saw me do a second ago? Even though there's not an equals 0, it's okay. We're just looking this time for intercepts, which are the zeros. Still plug in your B in the right spot, your A in the right spot, your C in the right spot. Simplify with PEMDAS and try to tell me, is it 1, is it 2, or is it none? Get a little bit ahead of me. Is it 1, is it 2, or is it none? Some of you, just plugging into the discriminant is helping you study the quadratic formula. Maybe not the whole thing, but at least the square root b squared minus 4ac, at least that part. And some of you, that PEMDAS was really messing you up in your groups a little while until you got it right. Max, what's up, bud?
Oh no, I'll wait.
You'll wait?
I'll
Okay.
give an answer, yeah.
If you did your PEMDAS correctly, you would have ended up with 9 plus 20, which is a positive number. Positive numbers mean 2 solutions. Positive numbers mean 2 solutions. And when you were over here, 49 minus 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 8 is 96. How's that going to turn out, guys? Yeah, it's going to turn out to be a negative. And what happens when I have a negative under a square root? Yeah. 0 gives me 1 because whether I add or subtract plus or minus square root, 0 doesn't make a difference and I just get 1. But remember, negatives will always give you errors. Negatives will always give you errors. Yeah, Adrian. Okay.
But for number 9,
Yeah.
it looks the same as number 13, but you wrote 1 solution instead of 1.
Except this one, 4 minus 4 was a 0, whereas 49 minus 96 is a negative. I didn't know what it was off the top of my head, Alexis, but I did know it was going to be negative. which is the less than 0 case. Is that cool? Nice. Alright guys, you can tell there are a couple other problems on this worksheet. We're actually going to be reviewing on Tuesday. Remember, we don't have school on Monday. But we might go ahead and finish up a few. But wait, hold on. Can you guys check the directions in 14 through 19? Yeah, but before that, it says solve, but how does it say to solve?
Using any method.
So, could you use what we just did, the quadratic formula, to solve?
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you use square roots and just say, wait a minute, hold on, can't I just divide by 3? And know that if I can get the squared alone, all I have to do is use a square root? I didn't have to use the quadratic formula. I just had to go ahead and use a square root. Some of these are maybe easier without the quadratic formula. And then there's some of them you might just want to complete the square in because it might make it a little bit easier. Some of them might actually be really nice with the factoring x method. Now, to be honest, I'm going to kind of cross out the graphing method because graphing is probably the hardest out of all of them unless you're given a graph. And if you're given a graph, you can look at it and say, I found the answers. But otherwise, I don't know if that's a good idea. But some of you might like completing the square, like for number 16. Pause. Some of you might like completing the square because the square is actually kind of easy. So what you guys are going to do in homework, that second half, is some of it is just how many solutions, discriminant, but then some of it is, wait a minute, we have lots of ways to solve and we get to choose? I want you to work this weekend on choosing and seeing, do I like only the quadratic formula? Do I kind of like the x method? We'll see. We'll see on Tuesday. Bye, guys. People who study to get the quiz, come find me today or else Tuesday in class.